The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the Bliss Business Podcast series, Marketing with Purpose, the show where we explore how to build real emotional connection in a marketplace that's too often focused on clicks instead of meaning. I'm Stephen Cash, joined by my co-hosts Tulio Siragusa and Mike Liskey. Hey, guys.
Stephen, great to see you. Thanks for having us.
One more time.
Yeah, let's do it. In our last episode, we talked about how customers become brand evangelists when a brand offers more than just products, when it offers purpose, story, and meaning. Today, we're asking the question at the center of everything we're doing in this series: what is purpose-driven marketing really? So let's unpack what it is, what it's not, and why it's become more than just a trend. It's become a real differentiator.
Yeah, Steve, I'm really glad that we're talking about this topic because there is, I think, a good amount of confusion, lack of clarity, out in the marketplace. So really, let's just start off with what it's not, right? So purpose-driven marketing, it's not just about supporting a specific social cause or being a nonprofit or adding a donation button to, say, your checkout page. Those are all very noble things, and I think they're important in our society, but it's not the core component. Really, purpose-driven marketing, it means that your marketing is aligned with your company's reason for being. And we'll talk a little bit later in the show about your why. And Simon Sinek obviously made that famous. But it means, again, that your marketing, in all your narrative, your brand is totally aligned with the reason that you exist. It's rooted in what you believe, how you serve your customers, all of your stakeholders, and what that means to people and that you're trying to reach. And a very core component. Again, really looking forward to adding some clarity in the marketplace on it.
And this is such a timely topic too, because people often confuse purpose with like philanthropy. So there's some businesses so like, our purpose is to be in business to make money, almost as if you have to choose that over being like a philanthropic initiative. And that's not what it's about. In marketing, it's actually less about charity and more about clarity. It's knowing exactly what your brand stands for, and then using that to emotionally connect with your audience at every touch point. So it's very strategic. It's not just sentimental. It's a way to make sure you're aligning with what your audience is expecting of you.
Yeah, and let's be honest, there's a lot of noise out there. People are just, they're tired of being sold to. They want to feel something, they want to belong. And that's what purpose-driven marketing offers, is kind of resonance, not just reach. We say that a lot. So let's dive into the core components here of purpose-driven marketing. So what does it actually look like in action? So let's get into these three pillars we believe define real purpose-driven marketing.
Yeah. So number one, clarity of your purpose, right? So you can market with purpose and you can't do that, right? If you don't know what your purpose is, what your reason for being as an organization. So, and again, this isn't your product list. This isn't a set of a bunch of features that you provide. This is really your higher why. Why do you exist beyond making money and those transactions? What change is it that you're really trying to create in the world today? And then sometimes, that can be rooted in the founder story. At other times, it could be a shared pain point that you identified with your customers. But clarity, really having clarity around that, is everything. And without it, your message will always feel either scattered or just shallow and hollow.
Exactly. And then to bring it home, the second point is you got to create emotional connections. It's not just about fulfilling a transaction, but actually creating an experience. And purpose is really the bridge between your company and your customer's identity, right? It's creating a bridge between the two. So if you could visualize that, it's connection. So it's the space where there's values where the values and your mission overlap. And when you find that shared ground between you and your customer, that's when your marketing stops being an interruption and it starts becoming a source of meaning. And really, that's where the magic happens, because emotionally connected customers are actually worth 306% more than satisfied ones. So we're not striving for just satisfied customers, but you could do that by fulfilling a transaction. What you're looking for is emotionally connected customer, creating that bridge between what their identity is and what you're doing. And that's really just good branding. It's not just good branding. It's actually just really smart, good business.
And then the third point is consistency across your touch points. You can't just sprinkle purpose on your homepage, and call it a day, right? Which we see, all too often. It has to show up in your ads, your emails, your sales conversations, your product packaging, and even your hiring process. So if your website says you care about sustainability, but your customer service feels, rushed or cold or, disconnected, that can be a problem. So purpose isn't just a message. It's really a mirror. It has to reflect the full experience of your company.
Yeah. And just to sum it up then for our audience, right? Those are the 3 C's that we just mentioned. You got to have clarity, connection, and consistency. So if you think about those 3 C's, you'll be able to, nail it. In fact, let's talk about maybe a couple of examples. One brand that comes to mind is Bombas, the sock company that you might be aware of, but they just don't sell socks. In fact, if you look up Bombas's purpose, the reason that they exist is to serve people that are experiencing homelessness, right? And that purpose shows up in their product design, right? Their 1-for-1 giving model. You buy one, they donate one, and their marketing voice with how they approach their target audiences. So they don't just lead with discounts. Really what they're doing is leading with empathy. And that makes customers feel like, they're part of something that's so much bigger than just a single transaction.
And what a beautiful example of like the higher purpose, right? But then there's also companies that it doesn't have to necessarily be related to a cause, right? So for example, let's look at Mailchimp. Their purpose is to empower small businesses to look big. I mean, that's a big purpose, right? You help a small company, sometimes even a solopreneur, look like they're bigger than they are. They can punch above their weight, so to speak. So everything from their branding to their tools to their tone of voice is focused on making entrepreneurs feel scrappy, smart, and supported. They're not trying to save the planet. They're just trying to uplift creative independence, and they do it with a lot of purpose.
Yeah, I think that's really important to understand. I mean, too often we think of purpose, we're confusing it with a social cause, and it can be that, but it can also be something like empowering a small business to look big. So let's dive into how we can use AI a little bit here to help. So how do you actually bring this kind of marketing to life if you're not a big brand with a 10-person creative team? And that's really exactly why we built AI CMO.
Yeah, Steven, thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, so that's exactly what AI CMO helps to do, but it doesn't just help to create content. You could go to any of these large language models, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and ask it to create something for you. Really what AI CMO does is help you uncover and articulate what your brand's deeper purpose is. It's emotional insights to craft messages that really connect, right? Not just convert. And once your purpose is clear, AI CMO will take that and help you to express it consistently across all the different channels, whether it's social or whether it's ads or whether it's blogs for your website. Your ads all the way down to your email sequences, the social posts and blogs will have that consistent message that's aligned, that's authentic, and it's emotionally intelligent, which is what you really would want to be looking for as a brand.
Yeah, and I think it's a common problem for marketers, right? Is you skip that step of finding out what the purpose is because it's not easy, right? We want to get right into talking about the features and the benefits and, maybe focus on keywords and all these other things. And we forget really the core part of this. And you end up sounding like everyone else in the process when you do that. And to get the most out of AI, you really need multiple ways to differentiate yourself versus just, hopping even on Chat GPT and having it produce something for you. Because like what you don't realize is that there are a lot of people producing the same thing and doing it the same way. So really, this is something that we've thought about a lot, and we're very intentional in trying to solve this problem with our AI Chief Marketing Officer at AICMO.io.
This used to be very complex work, and quite often, if you hadn't defined your purpose as a business, it became even more difficult to pivot when there was a need to pivot, because you're so tied to a mission, perhaps, that it's difficult to see beyond that mission. Whereas when you elevate to actually have a purpose as a business, you can evolve into different areas. I mean, your purpose could be we make cars, or you could be the purpose of connecting people. And that could be by buying a car and going somewhere, using a train, using an airplane, so many different ways to connect people. And depending on where the markets are going, if you've got it defined well, you can pivot to support those markets. So it's very strategic for companies to really take their time to understand the value of creating purpose, because then your whole marketing aligns towards this, and you can easily pivot to keep up with the times as well. A lot of companies struggle with this because they haven't taken the time to actually define their purpose.
Yeah, that's a great point. So to wrap this up, purpose-driven marketing is not just a marketing tactic, it's a philosophy. It's not about being seen as much as it's about being felt. And the brands that build that emotional connection are the ones that people come back to and they talk about again and again. And that's really where you want to get to with your purpose. So in our next episode, we're diving into the traditional CMO versus the category architect. Until then, we'll see you next time on the Bliss Business Podcast.